Good morning to everyone. Today I am going to discuss the essay Scientific Point of View, which is a prose. This essay was written by J.B.S. Halden, a British born geneticist and evolutionary biologist. He contributed in the development of neo Darwin thinking. Halden's essay, Science and the Future, were remarkable in predicting many scientific advances. In the scientific point of view, he opposes superstitious and supports rational thinking. Let me explain briefly. J.B.S. Halden always opposes superstitious and he supports rational thinking. Superstitious means మూఢనమ్మకాలు. If a mirror breaks in the house, we will think that something bad will happen. It is an example of superstitious. And supports rational thinking. Rational thinking means he supports a fact, and he is a British born geneticist and evolutionary biologist. Geneticist means who studies about genetics and hereditary, who studies about genes and hereditary, and he is a evolutionary biologist. Biologist means the one who studies about living organism. He contributed in the development of neo-Darwin thinking. According to Halden, science affects us in two ways. We are benefited by its applications, for example, using cars, buses, and motor vehicles instead of using horse-drawn vehicles, and for diseases, we are going to doctors instead of going for superstitious things, that is, witch. The second one is its influences on our opinion, as everyone believes that the earth is round and the heavens are nearly empty instead of solid. Let me explain you briefly about the paragraph. Halden says, because of science, today we are traveling in cars, buses, instead of horse-drawn vehicles such as bullock carts. In the olden days, we used to travel in bullock carts. Now we are traveling in cars, buses, and motor vehicles. And in the olden days, we used to go to witch to show our diseases, to cure our diseases. Now, instead of witches, we are going to the doctors, surgeons, because of science. And in the olden days, we used to think the earth is flat. But because of science, everyone believes that the earth is round and the heavens are nearly empty instead of solid. Halden says that the scientist is superior to God. As he is ethically neutral, he works out of the consequences of many actions. Halden says that science attempts to be truthful and impartial. By comparing scientific point of view with legal point of view, he says that a judge may be impartial in giving his judgment between two individuals, whereas a scientist is impartial not only between people but also about a tapeworm and the solar system. By comparing scientific point of view with God's view, he says that scientists interpret the consequences of many actions rather than passing judgment, which is while done by God. Let me explain this paragraph briefly. Halden, J.B.S. Halden says that a judge may be impartial in giving his judgment between two individuals. Means judge will give impartial judgment between two individuals, whereas a science is impartial not only between people but also about a tapeworm in the solar system. Science is the one which gives impartial judgment even between a tapeworm and the solar system. And by comparing scientific point of view with God's view, he says that scientists interrupt the consequences of many actions rather than passing judgment, which is while done by God. Next paragraph. The tendency of the average man has always dealt on emotional and ethical side of an issue rather than on facts. For this, Halden mentioned the problem of American Negroes. Some Americans believe that Negroes are inferior to them and they should be segregated from them, while some believe that they should enjoy the same rights like with white Americans. But the scientists make it that both these groups of people are comfortable only in their respective areas, and both of them die whenever they strip into each other's areas. I'll explain you briefly. Halton says average man has always dwelt on emotional and ethical side of an issue rather than on facts. Means, take an example. If a tiger sees a deer in a forest, tiger tries to eat it. As an average man, we'll be very emotional. But as a fact, tiger has to eat deer, then only it can live. And another example, he he gave an example between American Negroes. Some Americans believe that Negroes are inferior to them and they should be segregated for them, while some believe that they should enjoy the same rights like white Americans. So, as per Halden, as per scientific point of view, Americans, if they live in America, they are comfortable, whereas Negroes, if they live in their respective places, they are very comfortable. If Americans will go and live in Negroes places, it will be very difficult to adjust to them. Whereas if Negroes will come and live in America, it will be very difficult for Negroes, because in America it will be a cold climate. Negroes cannot adjust to the cold climate because Negroes are born in hot areas. So it will be very difficult for Negroes to adjust in America. Halden remarks that our approach to the problem of disease is even less rational. He says that the pre-Christian believed that if someone was suffering from any disease, they feel that it was a punishment from some god, but Halden makes it clear that health and sickness are part of nature. I'll just explain it briefly. Halden says the pre-Christians believe that if someone was suffering from any disease, they feel that it was a punishment from some god. If a person is suffering from any disease, what we'll think that he has done some sin in the past life, so he is suffering now. But Halden says that health and sickness are part of nature. Halden says that modern medicine has come out with miraculous drugs, but it has become very hard to apply its result in practice. For example, diabetes can easily be controlled by taking insulins, but people hardly take the suggestions of doctors. Typhoid can be controlled by using boiling water. Diphtheria, smallpox, and measles, the airborne diseases, can be prevented by public efforts. But most of the people do not care to follow this. The reason is that we do not have scientific spirit, Halden remarks. Halden says that scientists have invented insulins for diabetes, but most of the people are not utilizing it. So, what science can do if people are not utilizing it properly? And typhoid can be controlled by using boiling water. Diphtheria, smallpox, and measles, the airborne diseases, can be prevented by public effort. But most of the people do not care to follow this. So, if we are not following the inventions, we can't do anything. that the common people always attempt to cure from their disease, but science attempts to prevent the disease. Finally, Halden says that men and women should not be guided by false principle. He concludes that unless and until human adopt scientific point of view, the enemies of science cannot be conquered. He says, unless and until we utilize science, he concludes that unless and until human adopt scientific point of view, the enemies of science cannot be conquered. And we are seeing nowadays in agriculture, industries, because of science, there are a lot of many uses. It has been very comfortable for us to do agriculture and to run industries because of scientific point of view. And he says that in day-to-day life also we can use scientific point of view, which will be very useful. Halden concludes that unless and until human adopt scientific point of view, the enemies of science cannot be conquered. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.